faculty, students, and listener-supported community radio. CIUT 89.5 FM, celebrating 35 years as the sound of your city.
Ay, todo se ha de quedar. Si he sido yo molestoso con quienes más he querido, pero sé que algún día se acabará tanta molestia. Si acaso me llega el destino de partir ya de este mundo, a nadie molestaré, a nadie mendigaré, ay, todo se ha de quedar. En vida que me quisieras, de muerto ya para qué, de muerto ya para qué, ay, todo se ha de quedar.
Curated by the people, for the people. CIUT 89.5 FM is the sound of your city.
Y cuando vayas solita al cementerio querido y me halles en una tumba, no vengas por mí a llorar. En vida hubiera querido que llores por mi cariño, de muerto ya para qué, de muerto ya para qué, ay, todo se ha de quedar. Que llores por mi cariño, de muerto ya para qué, de muerto ya para qué, ay, todo se ha de quedar.
Hello, and welcome to Tracks from Abroad on CIUT 89.5 FM. My name is Seth Martosh, and I am here with my co-host,
Alex Troxel.
We are happy to be in today. Excited. We've got our board tech Matthew, our editor Rosa, and radio legend Ken Stour here in the studio just watching right now.
Don't mess up.
Yeah, of course not. For those of you who are new, Tracks from Abroad is a show where we go around the world speaking with students at the University of Toronto, hearing about their culture, about their life, about their interests, their studies, anything related to them. And we speak to musicians as well. And today we were in South America for the episode.
We were, and we did our interviews separately this week. So I ask you genuinely, non-rhetorically, who did you talk to, and what was it like?
Yeah, so a little bit later on in the episode, you'll hear from professor at U of T, Alejandro Sofier, who teaches Portuguese and Spanish, and we spoke about Argentina, we spoke about a little bit about the political scene right now. I'm not sure, to be honest, where it comes up in the edit, but we spoke about that, which is a little topical. And then he told us about his love for horror genre and literature, and a little bit about his journalism past. And Alex, tell me about your interview.
Well, I spoke with Tomas Peña from Ecuador. That was some Ecuadorian music you heard to start the show today. He is a cellist here at U of T, studying in the music department, of course, as you'd expect a cellist to do. And I started by asking him a bit about what he's studying here at U of T and how he got here.
Amazing.
Yeah, that's right. I'm a cello performance major at U of T.
Right. Could you tell us a bit about what got you into playing the cello?
I think music has been a part of me, like, really ever since I can remember. Like, when I was really little, I remember I would, like, perform stuff for my parents or my family. Yeah, I was always, like, a very musical person. Mm-hmm. And so for that reason, my parents looked at many like art schools in Ecuador, which is where I grew up. And I ended up going to this one called Colegio Menor, and it has a massive arts program, one of the best in Latin America, and that's where I kind of started my musical journey, I guess you could say. And it's there where I kind of saw, like, so many different instruments, and I saw different teachers perform every instrument you can imagine.
That's cool.
And so something about the cello always kind of struck me, because I thought it was such a cool thing, like, physically.
Right.
And then, like, the sound and the way people play just looks great. It's kind of like, I don't know, it can be very, like, rock and roll type music, right? So yeah, and it's not like the violin, which is very, like, you know, traditional. It's kind of like, it's a better version of a violin, you know.
Okay.
Like, forget I said that, but, like, anyways, that's what I think that's where my journey with the cello started.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that video of those two cellists playing.
Yeah.
Dueling cello. That is about as rock and roll as you can get with a stringed instrument. So
exactly. No, and, like, those, like, they're called, like, two cellos. Mm-hmm. I think that's, like, my earliest memory in terms of, like, cello music that I listened to. And now I'm more I study more, like, classical symphonic repertoire, very, like, classical cello things. But I think that group specifically brought me into, like, the cello world.
Wow.
Yeah.
So about what age were you when you went to this school that introduced you to the cello?
I was I was there my entire life, I think. Like, the school, like, the program goes from like kindergarten basically to grade 12. So it's the entire student journey in one place. That's basically cool. But the arts program, like the music program, it's always a part of that, and you start learning instruments from grade 4.
So you mentioned that you were into recreating sounds from movies, from plays. I've done a bit of digging, and I see that you've done a bit of performance for musical theater here at U of T.
Yeah, that's right.
Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, at Hart House. That's I think that's gonna be, when was that actually? It might have been earlier this year. We did a performance of Into the Woods, which is a very famous musical by Stephen Sondheim. Yeah, so it was basically a bunch of U of T music students. Actually, I met the conductor. I met him at orientation, so that's kind of how I got into, like, this musical theater community. And yeah, then he told me, he reached out, he was like, oh, we're looking for a cellist. We're putting together this production of Into the Woods. And I was like, oh, I've never done something like this before. But it was like such a cool experience. Honestly, it was so much fun. Everybody there was super nice. It was a really awesome experience. We had like a small band. We sat kind of towards the back side of the stage. And then the actors were in front of us, and they had these massive props and really cool stuff, lots of colors. And yeah, it was really fun. Like 4 shows, but I would definitely do it again.
That's great. I think we could go to a quick music break now.
Okay.
Is there anything that you would like to recommend that we play? Something that's been an important piece in your journey to where you are now, as you've...
Yeah, for sure. I was just thinking, as I said, music has always been a part of me, but also I feel like Ecuador, which is the place I was born in, I think that is also, it became such a big part of my personality, just being from Ecuador. And so actually there's like this celebration of the independence of the capital city, and it's actually coming up in a few weeks. And so I'd like to play this song called Chullita Quiteño, which is a very traditional Ecuadorian song, which I'm sure not everybody has heard, but I think it's a great tune.
That's great. Well, we'll have a listen, and I'll be playing it in a couple of weeks to celebrate independence.
Yes, for sure.
Okay, we'll take a listen, and we'll be right back on Tracks from Abroad on CIUT 89.5 FM, talking to Tomas Peña.
Yes.
Hello, and welcome back to Tracks from Abroad on CIUT 89.5 FM. I'm Alex Stroxel, and today I'm talking with Tomas Peña. Tomas, could you tell us a bit about, being a music student? Are there any Ecuadorian musicians who have played a big part, in your musical growth through the years?
Ecuadorian musicians. I don't know about Ecuadorian musicians specifically. I think, actually, I did this festival in Ecuador, and it's a very famous festival in Latin America, at least. It's called Festival Quitochelos. It is a massive kind of like reunion of so many Ecuadorian cellists, amateur and professional. And you get together and you play for world-renowned soloists, world-renowned teachers in masterclass settings or in private lessons. And then at the very end, there's this big concert that they put together. And it's just cello ensemble, so just cello. It's like a massive orchestra, but it's just cellos. So it's actually really cool to see and also to hear. So in that sense, Ecuadorian musicians, I feel like it's been a lot of like Ecuadorian colleagues and Ecuadorian people, learning cello. Lots of Ecuadorian teachers to Ecuadorian soloists. Mm-hmm. There's been a few. I think that specifically, that's an event that comes to mind when I think about like a very important musical learning event in my life, and it's Ecuadorian. It's very traditionally Ecuadorian.
So you play music from Ecuadorian composers, or do composers come from all around the world and you play their music?
For that specific one, it's for this specific festival, it's Ecuadorian music. So it's Ecuadorian composers, and there's some music, some like pop, famous tunes that they play as well. Like I remember, when I did it, we played like the Harry Potter theme, for example. But it's all arranged by Ecuadorian cellists.
Cool.
Yeah.
Maybe you could tell us a bit about where you're from then. If you mentioned that you're from the mountains, is there something that you've noticed that's different from the culture of where you grew up to now living in Canada?
Yeah, for sure. I grew up in the capital city in Quito, and that is right smack in the middle of the Andes mountain range. Culturally and also like geographically, it's a very different setting from Toronto. I feel like Toronto is, it's very flat compared to Quito. There's no mountains whatsoever. Yeah. It's also like the weather is it's more stable because it's in the middle of the world, right? So you don't really get seasons. Yeah. So like that's one of the biggest impacts when I moved to Canada when I was like 13 or 14. I saw snow for the first time. And I saw leaves changing in autumn. Really? And I'd never seen that before. Like the only snow I'd ever seen is at the very tops, like peaks of the mountains. But like, that didn't happen where, people generally lived.
Yeah. And now with winter approaching, the sun going down at 4:30.
Yeah,
it must
exactly.
be a different feeling, right?
It's very different. Over there, the sun goes down at 7 p.m.
all year.
Yeah. And it stays that way. Like here, I remember the first time we came, it was like around August, I think, and we were at Walmart, and then it was it's I don't know 8 or 9 p.m. and I remember walking out and it looked like 5 p.m. and I was like, this is so weird. How is it 9 p.m.?
Yeah. You went into Walmart and in that purgatory that is Walmart.
Yeah, exactly.
You're like, you came out and you thought no time had passed. That must
exactly. Yeah. It seemed like an extremely long amount of time. Yeah. But then coming out and like, it seemed nothing has changed. Yeah. It's so crazy.
Yeah. Is there another song that maybe represents that diverse Ecuadorian sound?
Yeah, there's definitely an Ecuadorian song that kind of represents the diversity and very like the pride there is in the country, just general pride about being Ecuadorian. And it's called Yo Nací en este país, by this very famous Ecuadorian singer, actually. His name is Juan Fernando Velasco, and the song title just basically translates into I was born in this country. And it's just a really beautiful song about the country.
That's fantastic. So we'll have a listen, and we'll be right back on Tracks from Abroad on CIUT 89.5 FM.
Yo nací en este país que sabe a caña y algodón, que se ilumina camina mucho antes de que salga el sol. Yo nací en este país de niños pobres y almidón, endeudado con los mismos que se lo llevaron todo. Un país lleno de historia, de hombres y mujeres de hormigón, llenos de coraje y de ternura, llenos de pasión. Yo nací en este país que va con alegrías y dolor, con quien termina y con canallas que nos roban la ilusión, que no le teme al porvenir, que no se deja derrotar, que no me pide visa y al que siempre quiero regresar. Na, 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 na. Yo nací aquí. Na, 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 na. Yo nací en este país que a veces me echa para atrás, a veces me resigno, a veces me quiero escapar. Pero yo nací aquí, y que aprendí a caminar. Aquí te conocí y aquí me enamoré de ti. Este país lleno de historia, de hombres y mujeres de hormigón, llenos de coraje y de ternura, llenos de pasión. Yo nací en este país que va con alegrías y dolor, con gente linda y con canallas que nos roban la ilusión, que no le teme al porvenir, que no se deja derrotar, que no me pide visa y al que siempre quiero regresar. Na, 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 na. Yo nací aquí. Na, 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 na. Yo nací aquí. Na, 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 na. Yo nací aquí. Na, 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 na. Si tengo que alejarme y caminar lejos de ti, te llevo en mis palabras, en mi manera de amar, te llevo en mis sentidos y en mi forma de cantar. Yo nací en este país que va con alegrías y dolor, con gente linda y con canallas que nos roban la ilusión, que no le teme al porvenir, que no se deja derrotar, que no me pide visa y al que siempre quiero regresar. Na, 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 na. Yo nací aquí. Na, 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 na. Yo nací aquí. Na, 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 na. Yo nací aquí. Na, 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 na. Yo nací aquí. Yo nací aquí.
Hello, and welcome back to Tracks from Abroad on CIUT 89.5 FM. I'm Alex. I'm here with Tomas Pena. Tomas, could you tell us a bit about symphonic music that you like playing, symphonic orchestra?
Yeah, for sure. So I think, well, I love every aspect of playing the cello. I love playing in small groups and quartets, chamber music. I love playing solo repertoire. But I think my favorite, like absolute favorite component of my musical experience has been playing in an orchestra. Mm-hmm. I think that has just been such an enriching journey for me.
Are there any Latin American musicians, songwriters that have inspired you and have become a big part of your personality in life?
Yes, for sure. I think with Latin American music, I kind of mentioned the Ecuadorian like very indigenous traditional music that we've played, and it's very interesting. I think though something that really speaks to me in terms of like Latin American culture, and it really like activates my Latin American roots. Yeah. I feel like is very like dance related music. So when you have like salsa, or you have reggaeton, or you have I don't know, mambo, you have like different types of Latin American dances. I think that really ties in with my Latin American personality, because like over in Ecuador, whenever you got together for a party, it was basically Latin American music and everybody's dancing. So it's dancing all the time. I think that specific type of music really relates to my Latin American personality. So there's tons of really famous Latin American singers like Mark Anthony. I don't know if you know Mark Anthony. Yeah, like
of course.
Extremely famous salsa music performer. Who else? Yeah, I'd have to think of more people, but there's tons of. Oh, there's this group I went to see them perform with my cousin a long time ago in Ecuador. They're called Chino y Nacho. It's kind of like a duo from Venezuela. So two guys singing together, and they have really, really popular songs. There was always a Chino y Nacho song in every party I ever went to, high school party.
Is there anything, just as a parting question, if someone went to Ecuador, what are the things that you'd say, you have to see this, you have to experience that?
Yeah. First of all, definitely go to the middle of the world. There's like a massive sculpture right on the equator, so you can literally stand on both hemispheres at the same time, and you can take a picture. I think that's such a cool feeling, just being there.
Yeah.
You should definitely do that. Definitely do all like the natural things. Go to the Galapagos Islands, a very unique tourist destination. And you have lots of different types of fauna and flora there that you don't find anywhere else in the world. The beaches are incredible, and then you also have the Amazon jungle there. If you go hiking, and you like hiking, you like going on rivers, kayaking, all that types of stuff. For example, mountain sightseeing, hiking mountains. That's also some of like the key things to try out in Ecuador. Yeah. I don't know if have you ever been to Ecuador?
I haven't been, but I've been looking at a lot of pictures, if that
counts.
Oh
yeah. Okay, well you can kind of see how like majestic it is.
Yeah. Because the Andes go right through the country, right?
Exactly.
So there you get all these different biospheres. On one side it's dry, on one side it's wet and rainy, and then that's really cool. Have you been to the Galapagos Islands?
Not yet, actually, which is interesting. I feel like when you're from somewhere, I don't know, if like being from Toronto, you don't really do the touristy things a lot. And it's, but I definitely want to go now that, now that I've been here in Canada and people are like, where should I go? How have I not been to the Galapagos yet, Well,
I think you have a decent excuse, because it is like 1,000 kilometers from the coastline or something.
It's pretty far.
It's not close. Like, not every Torontonian has been to the Rockies, or
exactly.
I haven't. So
it's kind of far. I don't know if people fly there actually, or I feel like it's usually a cruise.
Right.
It's most of the time it's a cruise. But like I've heard from friends and family that it's like the place to visit in Ecuador.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. From the pictures, it looks like, because there are no, I think, natural predators on the island, every animal has evolved to just look as cute and rotund as possible.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, you have
incredible.
Like, it's really interesting because you have penguins all over.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's one of the only places where that happens. If not, like one of the warm places that happens, because you have penguins in the South Pole.
Yeah.
But you get there and then you go to the beach and then there's a penguin there, and then there's like a sea lion on the equator. Yeah. So it's a very unique type of tourism, like something. If you go there, you'll see things you've never seen before.
Yeah. That's fast. Well, that's a good sales pitch for sure. Thank you so much for spending time with us today.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me. This was really fun.
That's great. Yeah. So we're going to listen to some Chino y Nacho.
Yes.
If I said that right?
Yes, that's right.
And
absolutely.
And again, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Chino y Nacho.
Esta canción nació de un pensamiento.
¿Es así?
Y yo solo pienso en ti, mi niña bonita.
Mi amor.
Oye, tú reconoces un hit cuando lo oyes. Lo que siento por ti es ternura y pasión. Tú me has hecho sentir que hay en mi corazón tanto amor.
tratar de vivir sin tu amor, sin tu amor.
Mi niña bonita, mi dulce princesa, me siento en las nubes cuando tú me besas y siento que vuelo más alto que el cielo si tengo de cerca el olor de tu pelo.
Mi niña bonita, brillante lucero, se queda pequeña la frase te quiero. Por eso mis labios te dicen te amo. Cuando estamos juntos más nos enamoramos. Aquí hay amor, aquí hay amor, aquí hay amor, amor, aquí hay amor, amor, aquí hay amor.
Este amor que como espuma sube, que cuando te tomo de la mano por el parque camino en las nubes. Parece mentira que ya no recuerdo nada cuando solo estuve. Nada se podrá comparar con algo tan especial. Y agradezco al tiempo, me ha demostrado que las cosas buenas llegan en cualquier momento. Yo no imaginaba que conocería algún día este sentimiento, un amor puro y natural, digno de admirar. Un ser de fantasía, lleno de romance y alegría, de bellos detalles cada día, nena, ¿quién lo diría? Que de ti yo me enamoraría y que sin tu amor no viviría. Como sabía que esto pasaría, que ibas a ser mía y que yo querría amarte por siempre. Mi niña bonita, mi niña bonita, mi dulce princesa, me siento en las nubes cuando tú me besas y siento que vuelo más alto que el cielo si tengo de cerca el olor de tu pelo.
Mi niña bonita, brillante lucero, te queda pequeña la frase te quiero. Por eso mis labios te dicen te amo. Cuando estamos juntos más nos enamoramos. Aquí hay amor,
Mi niña bonita,
aquí hay amor,
mi niña bonita.
aquí hay amor, amor, aquí hay amor, amor, aquí hay amor.
Desde este momento no podrás sacar esa canción de tu cabeza.
Chino y Nacho,
Mi niña bonita,
Richie Peña,
tú y únicamente tú.
mi niña bonita.
Magna.
Esto es un hit mundial, manate.
Hello and welcome back to Tracks from Abroad on CIUT 89.5 FM. I'm Alex, I'm here with Seth, and I want to thank again Tomas Pena for speaking with us. Before we get into the next segment of the show, the next interview, I'd also like to thank all of our listeners for all the donations that we received in our fall funding drive last week. So we made it to 73% of our targeted goal of $100,000.
Wow.
So thanks for that. But if you still want to show your appreciation, believe it or not, we're still accepting donations. Isn't that funny? So you can head over to ciut.fm. That's on the World Wide Web, of course. And you can donate there if you still feel the need to show your appreciation. And, we'll shout it out if we see big donations coming in.
Yeah, we would be forever grateful.
Of course, yeah. And one of the reasons that we seek donations is because here at Tracks from Abroad, we do a little bit of real-life traveling, too. Seth, you went to Montreal to get some coverage. What did you do there?
Yes, this is true. This past week, me and one of the producers and founder of the show, Jesse McDougall, we traveled to Montreal for the music conference Mondial Montreal. We saw some really incredible performances, world music everywhere from Brazil, France, Argentina as well, actually, some traditional Quebec music as well. And we filmed some great interviews that hopefully will be hitting your eyes and ears very soon. And it was a really, really, incredible experience getting to do that. And thanks to the show for letting us get there.
Yeah, so you'll be able to catch that for sure on the Instagram, and some of it will probably make it onto air too.
Yeah, we have a ton of great interviews, and the next part of our show we will be speaking to professor from the school Alejandro Sofier from Argentina. First, he speaks a little bit about his upbringing and his studies of Mexican horror literature. So you're listening to Tracks from Abroad, and let's take a listen.
Well, I come from a middle-class family in Buenos Aires, in Argentina. I was always surrounded with a lot of books. I enjoyed reading from a very young age, and my mother was very supportive of me, so she brought me a lot of books. My first decision was to study political science, but then I started the first semester and I thought that was not for me, and so I went and studied literature. I specialized in Latin American literature, in particular, and Argentinian literature. In the middle, I did a lot of jobs. I was a librarian. Then I went started working as a secondary school teacher. I taught literature and Spanish. I did that for like 7 years. Yeah, I got married in 2014. In 2015, there was a change of government in my country, and we were like having a hard time deciding what we wanted to do with our future, and we always wanted to come to Canada, and so I decided to pursue a master's degree at Western and UBC. I got accepted at the three of them, and I decided to come here. I did my master's, and then I did my PhD, and so now I'm here.
And specifically in your studies, you have some focus on like the horror genre, right?
Yes, well, that's a curious thing because I was always more interested in detective fiction, mystery fiction. I brought and published some detective fictions in Argentina, and then I came here, and when I was deciding what I was going to do with my PhD or what I wanted to base my dissertation on, I had only one thing that I was not very sure, that was I didn't want to work with Argentinian fiction because as my previous work as a writer, I know a lot of writers from Argentina, and I didn't want to involve with doing research on people that I know in person. But then I attended more like a talk by an invited guest here at Latin American Studies program. His lecture was more about narratives of horror related to political things, and that was my eureka moment, my epiphany, when I saw like mixed together my interest with narco-narratives and the horror genre. So I got back to the horror genre, which it has always been one of my favorite genres, but I had it like buried inside me because my mother really never wanted me to watch horror films and all that, so I was like, I kept apart from that, but I really discovered my passion for horror.
What do you think specifically about the genre that excites you so much?
One of the things that I find most fascinating about the genre is that it's one of the most political genres around here. It's a genre that usually gets a lot of traction when there's political, economical, social crisis. And so I am a very political person in my private life. I always been very interested in politics. That's one of the aspects that most interests me. And also, well, the gore, of course.
You know, you talk about also writing books, and publishing books, I'm sure, is like a very exciting experience. What for you is like the most rewarding part of that whole process?
I think the most rewarding thing about publishing books is getting to know the people that read your books and talk with them, and maybe when you get some good feedback. Yeah, I think that's the most rewarding thing, getting to know that your public and being with them, and when they tell you that they saw something in your book that you maybe didn't thought about.
What about something that's more difficult, or something that, you know, the regular person wouldn't necessarily know that goes into the process?
It's hard, and it's not always very rewarding because, of course, I mean, you get all this feedback sometimes, but like I published with Penguin back in Argentina. And for like a month, the book came out. I was like the star for my editor, and she was like telling me things and writing me, and look at how are we selling, and it was very interested in me, and well, when is your next book coming and all that. And then when that little window closed, they don't even answer your emails. You get ghosted. The whole publishing industry is hard, you know. You get your check like 6 months after a past, but yeah, I mean, it has some good things too as well.
We're going to take a short music break. If there's any specific song from Argentina that you'd like to recommend, we can play.
Well, you can look for Hi 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 by Redonditos de Ricota.
All right, well, we're going to listen to Hi 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 on Tracks from Abroad on CIUT 89.5 FM.
En este
beso y brindo a tu suerte. No lo soñé, y se ofreció mejor que nunca. No mires por favor y no prendas la luz, la imagen te desfiguró. Este film da una imagencita. Esos chicos son como bombas pequeñitas. El peor camino a la cueva del perico. Para tipos que no duermen por la noche. No lo soñé, y vas corriendo a la deriva. No lo soñé, los ojos ciegos bien abiertos. No mires por favor y no prendas la luz, la imagen te desfiguró. El montaje final es muy curioso, es en verdad realmente entretenido, mas en la oscura multitud desprevenido, tiranizando a quienes te han querido. No lo soñé, se enderezó y brindo a tu suerte. No lo soñé, y se ofreció mejor que nunca. No lo soñé, y vas corriendo a la deriva. No lo soñé, los ojos ciegos bien abiertos. No mires por favor y no prendas la luz, la imagen te desfiguró.
Welcome back to Tracks from Abroad on CIUT 89.5 FM. Today we're talking with Alejandro from Argentina. I want to ask you also a little bit about, your upbringing and the difference in culture that you find here in Canada.
Well, first of all, in Latin America, we used to have dinner much later in the night. The first day I came here to Toronto and I went looking for a restaurant like at 10 p.m. Well, that night I didn't have anything for dinner, as you can imagine, because everything was closed. And another thing that kind of different is the political landscape in Latin America is lived with much more passion and much more intensity, because in each election you are risking your life, you know, your lifestyle, your choices, your rights. Right now there's a runoff election in my country and things are so intense right now. You cannot enter Twitter and not get bombarded by a lot of political discourse and discussion and a lot of enraged people, and it's kind of very intense. In Argentina, voting is mandatory. Mm-hmm. And you are always registered to vote. Also, voting is during a Sunday, so they make sure that you don't have any other thing to do.
No excuses.
No excuses. And they are more like engaged in the whole democratic process.
And, going forward, do you plan to still do a lot of work in the horror genre? And what specific do you kind of have planned for?
I tend to continue working with the horror genre. I am currently continuing my work with my dissertation and trying to convert it into a book. And I am also interested in moving my work to the rest of Latin America, specifically now, Argentina and maybe other places. Also some US-Mexico border narratives that are coming from there that are very horror-centric.
How do you feel about posthumous releases of books?
In this case, he intended to get this book published. He left some notes on how to publish it, so I think it's granted that it was a good call. But if the writer wasn't intending in publishing it, I'm not so sure. It varies depending on the artist. Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about your recent lectures and talks that you had at the Toronto Public Library?
I gave a public lecture at Toronto Public Library. I talk about some Mexican horror fictions. And also I recently had CBC Radio do a documentary podcast about my work as well. So I'm really happy about this because I always think of myself as a public intellectual. I intend to be a public intellectual. I try to make my work and my thinking available to the broadest public possible and make it accessible as far as it can be. I think that's something that's very important for me. With age, I have been more vocal on my opposition to cryptic writing styles and these hermetic ways of writing. I think that academic writing needs to be more accessible to the general public. That's one of my goals with my work.
How do you propose that is to happen?
First of all, try to drop all the hermetic way of writing. Try to be as clear as possible. Try to be as... I have some background as a journalist as well. So for me, it's easier to write for a broader public than to an academic public, if you want. But apart from that, I think that if you know how to write, you need to know how to make your ideas accessible to the people that are going to benefit from your work.
Can you tell us a little bit about your past as a journalist? What specifically did you report on?
Yes, I was mostly a cultural journalist. I wrote essays, think pieces, and book reviews in one of the biggest newspapers in Argentina. Well, my first book was a non-fiction about Orthodox Jewish denomination. And my second book, which is one that I have a soft spot for, was a mix of non-fiction and essay about what I call the invasion of American pop culture in Argentina and more generally in Latin America. So I went to comic conventions and anime conventions because it was also some Japanese pop culture as well, and I interview a lot of people, talk with a lot of people, and I try to do a little history about how these trends came to Argentina and Latin America.
Anything else that you'd like to speak about or bring up? Do you have any talks or anything coming up?
We are preparing a discussion panel here at U of T about the runoff elections in Argentina and the rise of the far right in Latin America in general. It's going to be hosted at the Latin American Studies program. I organized the panel and I'm going to be speaking in the panel. And we are going to be discussing some of these things and how they came to be.
Well, we're going to take another short music break. If there's one more song that you could recommend for us, that would be amazing.
Ya no sos igual by 2 Minutos.
All right, we're going to take a short music break on Tracks from Abroad on CIUT 89.5 FM. Hello, you are listening to Tracks from Abroad on CIUT 89.5 FM. We just heard from Alejandro Sofier. We want to thank him for coming in and sharing with us a little bit about Argentina. And, if you're following the news, there's a historical election that just happened there. I'm no political pundit, but, the last song kind of made me want to maybe start a revolution. So you can always listen to that in support. But, we want to thank the crew that works on Tracks from Abroad as well. We have Matthew, the board tech, editors Simon and Rosa, social media managers Akshita and Isabella, as well as directors Jesse and Elizabeth.
And we're going to just play one more song to close at the show. Could you tell us a bit about it, Seth?
Yeah, so this song is from the Imbayacunas music group from Ecuador, and they perform a lot in Canada. Performing some traditional Ecuadorian rhythms, and we hope you enjoy.
Yeah, hopefully you do. I know that the traditional Ecuadorian music, I found it very interesting. It's such there are so many different cultures that sort of went into creating Ecuador, the indigenous culture, the Spanish culture, the African culture, so you can really hear that in the traditional music, which I find very enjoyable.
And some very interesting flutes, I feel like, and like handmade instruments as well.
Yeah, exactly. So that's gonna close it out for us here today at Tracks from Abroad. So as always, we're gonna thank you for listening. We're gonna wish you a happy evening, and we're gonna let you know that coming up next is Indigenous Waves, so you can stick around for that. Thank you, and have a good night.
Imbayacunas, desde Ecuador para el mundo.
Pasó